a good meeting for the Ames City Council for February 9th to order. Welcome council and staff and those who are also here to participate in the budget wrap-up. As has in the past, has been the habit for many, many months here, we are continuing to be electronically meeting as allowed by the Code of Iowa, and invite you to go to the City of Ames website, and you can access either the Zoom link and or find the toll-free number that you can call in and participate. And we continue to broadcast live on MediaCom channel 12, as well as on our YouTube and cityofames.org channel 12. This evening, we're going to go ahead and do our FY 21-22 budget wrap-up with council budget presentations. We're going to start off with public art this evening. I believe, Brian, you're going to lead us off.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Art Commission has submitted to the City Council a budget request document that I believe was included in previous packets for you. The Commission is requesting $46,000 in funding for the next fiscal year, which matches the current year allocation of $46,000. The Commission is also asking to carry over any unspent funds from the current fiscal year into the next fiscal year. There are 3 representatives of the Public Art Commission that are on the meeting tonight, Karen George, Sarah Sherman, and Candace Zwank. And I believe they'd be able to answer any questions that you might have or present any further materials that they might like to emphasize.
Welcome, Karen, Sarah, and Candace. Any questions for the Public Art Commission, Council? It appears not. Thank you for coming. And again, thank you for your service on the Public Art Commission and for your work in putting together this budget. Okay, Brian, we'll move on then to CODA.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 1B, arts funding, CODA.
Okay, for the Commission on the Arts, the Council authorized a 5% increase over the current year allocation at the budget guidelines session back in December. CODA has recommended awards to agencies totaling $187,535 and reserving $5,558 for special project grants. So that is spending a total of $193,093 on CODA agencies for the next fiscal year. I believe Deanne Brill, representing CODA, is on the meeting, and she can answer any questions that you might have about that allocation process.
I do have a question.
David?
I've expressed my interest to the rest of council in possibly increasing the amount of CODA funding for this year. So let me just ask you, Deanne, I think CODA did some great discernment work in allocating the funding this year based on our 5% recommendation. If council were to increase that, maybe even up to the original amount that you asked for, what would be your process for deciding how to forward those funds on to the members?
Well, okay, it would be an increase of a little over 25,000, if my math worked out. Probably we would fully fund each proposal. Unless we would go through the process that we do where everyone submits their recommendation and then Brian and his staff basically do an average for each agency. But if you gave us the full amount, I mean, the quick and dirty way would be to fund everything for what they asked.
And is that something that you feel CODA would be comfortable doing or something you would want to consult with them on?
Since most of the time our numbers are fairly close, for some reason, it's not that we get together beforehand, but I can't imagine there would be any objection to that. But I'm just a representative. I hate to speak for them, but I think they'd be thrilled.
I understand. And maybe a question for Brian as well. If we, when council allocates a total amount for CODA, then that doesn't actually obligate CODA to pass along all of the money. Isn't that true? It sort of depends on circumstances from that going forward.
That is true. It's always a two-step process. The council has to allocate money in the budget, and then the council has to authorize that money go to a particular agency for a particular purpose through contracts. Now, normally we don't take the contracts back to CODA before they are approved by the agency and council. One thing that we could do here is if the council allocated enough money in the budget to finance all of these requests, we could simply just go back to CODA quickly here in the next month or two and ask CODA, do you think that there would be any problem with allocating all this money to all the agencies, or is there some sort of a concern with that, rather than going through one by one and reviewing each one again? But then, normally that process to create the contracts and authorize the money to be spent is more automatic, and it doesn't go back through the commission.
Can you remind us how quickly the contracts come back to council generally?
Usually they come back in the spring. They only need to come back to the council before July 1st in order to get everything arranged before the start of the fiscal year. So we do have quite a bit of time to explore further if there's a concern about whether the agencies should receive all of their requested amounts.
Great, that covers it for me, thanks.
David, is this a one-time allocation increase, or is this something that sets a new benchmark?
I was imagining it primarily as proposing a one-time increase, but I was planning to discuss that further during our the part of the agenda where we'll actually do motions on amendments.
Other questions for Brian or Deanne on the CODA funding recommendation? Okay. Thank you for participating, Deanne. And we're going to go ahead and move on to item 1C, Human Services Asset. Deb.
Right. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for your time tonight to discuss the asset recommendations for fiscal year 21-22. I would like to point out that we do have 3 of the asset volunteers here on the call tonight. Andrea Rich, Mary Beth Galimo, and Jennifer Schill are with us. And we also have Barb Neal and Chris Crippen from SciRide present in case there are questions about the transportation funding. So 4 funders are in the asset process: the city, the county, United Way, and Iowa State University student government. And collectively, these funders had a total of $4,653,506 available for allocation for fiscal year 22. And this is about a 4.6% increase over the current year. The city's portion of that 4.6 million is about 34.5%, or the $1,601,093 that you had approved in December. The resources that are used by the asset volunteers in their decision-making process include several things: the funder priorities, liaison reports, agency budgets, and then the outcome data that is extracted from the Clear Impact Scorecard. There's also much discussion that goes on during each of the 3 panel work sessions, and I think that's the invaluable part of the conversation for the volunteers as they discuss their recommendations. The Asset Board approved these recommendations at their January 21st asset meeting, And the amount of the recommendations is $4,606,016. And of this amount, the city's portion is $1,586,291. So obviously there is a certain amount that's unallocated across the funders, and that totals $47,490. And in the asset memo that was included in your packet, there are options that are outlined for council to consider with the city's unallocated amount of $14,802. I do have a few services that I'd like to highlight for you. There were 5 agencies who requested either level funding or a reduction in their request compared to the current year. And that was primarily due to the kinds of services they provide in the uncertainty with the COVID-19 pandemic. So they wanted to be mindful of that. So the first agency I want to talk about is YWCA. They made a first-time request to the city, and out of the 3 services that they requested funding for, the volunteers identified 2 of them that met the city's priorities under youth development. And so $2,917 is recommended for those 2 services. I also like to talk about MICA and primary healthcare. Primary healthcare is a new agency to the asset process starting fiscal year 22, and they are providing the dental clinic services. So they requested $95,000, which was a level request to what MICA requested a year ago. And then MICA had requested funding for child dental services, and the volunteers felt that those funds would be better appropriated to primary health care for the direct dental care that they'll be providing to children. And so the total that primary health care could be receiving is $97,475. So that would take care of dental services for the clients that they'll be serving. And of that, that amount, that $2,475 that was originally requested by MICA, the recommendation is to sequester those funds for the fiscal year until primary health care would need them. We're not sure if they would be needed, but it feels like they would be better appropriated to that agency for the services that they're providing. The next agency I'd like to talk about is HRDA. There was an extensive conversation about HRDA's increased requests to the city during the budget issues discussion in December. And the volunteers are recommending about a 4% increase. So a total of $42,665 of city funds. And the partnership between HRDA and CyRide involves the dial-a-ride services, and they are coordinating efforts at this time to move riders over from the regular HRDA trips over to dial-a-ride. They've had a few meetings, and they've sent out correspondence to those riders, and that's something that Barb and Chris can talk a little bit more about if you've got questions. So that coordination is underway. And I think it's important to remember that during your discussion in December, it was focusing on HRDA's availability to fill transportation gaps that our transit system would not be able to fulfill. The Volunteer Center of Story County is looking at a significant reductions in funding across all the funders, especially in their volunteer management service. Asset started addressing this about a year ago when funding was reduced by 30%. The volunteers continue to determine that volunteer management doesn't align with funder priorities, and so a decrease for fiscal year 22 continues. Youth engagement does meet the city's priority of youth development services and activities. So for both services, volunteer management and youth engagement, the city's funding would be going from $7,650 to $3,285. And that wraps it up for those service highlights. We do have, well, I'm going to back up to the Volunteer Center here quickly. With their funding, there is an additional recommendation from Asset to sequester those funds as well until we've had a chance to talk to the volunteer center about what kind of financial impact this decrease in funding will have to the organization. We're hoping to get that resolved before contracts have to be returned to the city for fiscal year 22. So that would be part of the motion, as well as sequestering those dollars for volunteer service, for primary health care, and then making a determination on the unallocated amount of $14,802. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deb. Questions for Deb or for Mary Beth, Jenny, or Andrea? Or for Barb or her staff? Does not appear to be any. Mary Beth and Andrea and Jenny, thank you for your efforts. We know it's an awful lot of work, and you have a lot of decisions to make that are not necessarily always easy. But on behalf of City Council, thank you for your time and effort. So we truly value the time you take and the efforts that you make to make these decisions and recommendations. There's a lot of stuff here. I know when I go through and sign the contracts, my hand starts getting tired. There's lots and lots of agencies that we do take care of and support. So thank you very much.
I apologize. My video went out momentarily.
Sorry, Tim. We're gonna move on. No, just kidding. Go ahead, Tim.
One question, Deb. Could you speak to the subject of the decision with respect to not funding the volunteer center?
Yes. Yep. So it's volunteer, primarily the volunteer management service. So this is something that Asset's been working with the volunteer center on now for about 2.5 years, making sure that the services that they're providing, the volunteer management services they're providing, support the Asset agencies. And what we've been working with them on is helping to identify what are those volunteer needs within the organizations and what is the volunteer center doing to address those needs. And what we're finding is over 70% of the organizations in Asset are managing most of their volunteer needs. They either have their own volunteer coordinator on staff, or they have a staff person who is performing those functions. And so you can go to the Boys and Girls Club or YSS and go to their website or call them and indicate that you're interested in volunteering. And then they do the vetting of those volunteers to make sure the volunteer is a good match for the clientele that they serve. So there's that going on. And then again, looking and aligning with the funder priorities. And it was felt by the Asset volunteers that the youth engagement service better meets the priorities of the funders, and in this case of the city, more so than the volunteer management service.
Okay, I mean, it's they provide services much more broadly than just for the Asset agencies, and so I just want council to appreciate if they go away, that will have impacts broadly in the community. So, Deb, were there any options explored about maybe trying to make some kind of corrective, or not corrective necessarily, because I don't think they were doing wrong, but trying to work with them to readjust so that it better met the expectations of the Asset process?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing since the fall of 2018. Is helping them align that with the expectations of the admin team and of the funders. And you're right. I mean, they do go beyond serving the Asset agencies. They serve the community. They serve businesses. They do a lot for Iowa State University and on-campus activities. In their strategic plan, they've indicated that they would be searching for other diverse funding streams, because right now about 63% of their budget is Asset funding, and the largest funder through asset is United Way, and the United Way board did not allocate funding specifically for volunteer management services for fiscal year 22. And so even if all the other funders were to fund at the request of the volunteer center for volunteer management, it still wasn't going to make up the difference of the loss of funding through United Way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Jenny and Andrea and Mary Beth are available. Do you have any comments you'd like to make regarding Tim's question? You don't have to, but I just wondered if you did. Thanks for the question, Tim.
Mayor, I just want to see if I'm remembering correctly on this. It seems like maybe last year or the year before, we suggested investigating whether the volunteer center could be pulled out of the asset process and moved into the other outside funding categories. Did we explore that, or am I remembering wrong?
You could be remembering correctly. I personally don't remember that. Steve or Brian, do you recall that from last year?
It might have been the year before too. Considering how long this has been going on.
I don't remember that. I don't.
Yeah.
I think at some point we did that
Whether you
came up, but I don't know that it was followed up. And
Whether you
know,
discussed it or made a motion as a council, I don't know either.
yeah, but that I think was something that at least some of us had talked about. Perhaps it was after a joint funders meeting or something like that. But the mismatch between the Story County or the Volunteer Center Story County and asset didn't necessarily preclude the Volunteer Center seeking other sorts of funding if they felt they fit into one of the other categories that were not asset funded, I think was the gist of the discussion.
Deb, can you just comment too on how it seems that United Way is a pretty large funder of how's that apportioned? Can you comment on that, please?
Sure. It goes back in time. So United Way used to manage the volunteer services, and that was pretty common of United Ways across the country. And United Way here had decided to change its mission and move away from that direct management of volunteers and focus more on the campaign drive and the funding of human service organizations. So they changed their focus. And so the Volunteer Center of Story County was then created, and to help spin that off into the nonprofit, United Way had provided the bulk of the funding. So that's why throughout the course of time, United Way has been the major funder of that particular organization.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move on. Barb and Chris, thank you for attending this evening. Looks like there's no questions regarding HERDA. And any other closing comments, Deb?
No, thank you for your time.
Mary Beth, Andrea, Jen, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Okay, Brian, we're back to you with outside funding requests.
Okay. For this year's requests, other than the farmers market request, which is new this year, and the youth sports complex request, which is a substantial increase from the current year, there really aren't a lot of changes compared to the current year. The requests are either flat or only up or down a few dollars. Now, normally the farmers market is funded by the ACVB's grant program, but the application deadline was missed, which is why they applied for funding through this program. So it's staff's recommendation that if that $7,000 award is made to farmers market through the outside funding request program, that we indicate that this is expected to be a one-time award, and that in the future, farmers market should go through the ACBB's program. And if that's the case, then we wouldn't include that $7,000 in the base when we compare this year to future years for the outside funding group. This year, the council authorized enough money to fully fund all of the requests. It's important to note there are really three pots of money now that fund these outside funding requests. One is the main pot of money, which you've fully funded. The second is the pot of money for parking meter reimbursements. And so when we have requests to waive large swaths of the parking system for special events, we take money from local option and we allocate it to the parking fund to make it whole again. And then the third pot of money is for the AEDC request. That $15,000 we take out of the hotel motel tax fund because it's an economic development related activity. So the first two pots of money are both from local option, and the third one is from hotel motel. And that AEDC funding is separate from the other operational support that AEDC generally receives every year for its operations. So that's all I have for you this year. There's not as much detailed analysis as there typically would be, simply because the awards were, or the requests were pretty straightforward, and there really weren't as many hard decisions to make about where to make the recommendations. So, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian on the outside funding requests?
Brian, am I correct in thinking that the reason the total percentage was so large is primarily because of the Hunsaker Youth Sports Complex increase?
Yeah, it's between that and the farmers market request. You know, the farmers market wasn't in there in the current year. So between those two requests, that's roughly $20,000, $20,124 of the $20,388 total increase. So almost all of that increase is those two initiatives.
Other questions for Brian on this topic? Okay. We can move on to the other requests. Council?
I'm sorry, Mayor, what are you looking for?
Well, this is the opportunity on the agenda. If there's any other requests to add to the budget, this is the time that they can be voiced.
Okay, then I would love to voice one. I would like to see us add $10,000 to the budget to cover an educational program for painting the storm drain inlets. And I talked to city manager about this, and Steve, you can correct me on the recommendation you made for where this money would come from. But I believe it was to come from the sewer fund.
If it's predominantly for education, not just art itself, then I think it would come from the storm sewer utility fund, not sanitary sewer, but storm sewer, if you wanted to do that.
So
in next year's budget, I forgot to ask, in 21-22?
Yes. So I was looking for an addition of $10,000 to the storm sewer utility fund to cover a painting pilot program for the storm drain inlets to educate about the watershed and the environment.
that a motion?
That is a motion. I move we add that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amber seconded. Thank you. Discussion.
I looked at the information that you sent, Gloria. It looks really cool. It looks like a great project. So I think it has a good chance of success here.
Excuse me,
Like-
Gloria.
Yes,
What's the
Steve.
pattern after that program you showed us? You want us to come back with criteria and things like that, or?
I am not sure that council is ready for that yet, as I was just assuming we'd be putting the money in the budget at this point and then adding it to an agenda later to discuss. I think there are a lot of different models out there
Okay,
for
good,
what this program could be.
good. Just want to clarify.
And to follow up on that clarification is just so there's no misdirection going forward, a la what happened a year ago, Steve, that further direction will come from council as we get closer to July 1 of next year. Is that correct? And staff will come back seeking clarification?
Yeah, on criteria for the program, things like that.
Okay,
So
very good.
it'll be an item on the agenda to discuss with the council if this passes.
Okay, very good. Further comments, discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
I,
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. David, did you have something?
I was imagining that my CODA proposal would be an amendment to the budget. Would you rather have me do it here?
Steve, look to you or Dwayne for recommendation on that regarding,
I don't think you want to vote twice, so maybe you want to do it when we get to the amendment.
okay, very good.
David, that's in which fiscal year?
21, 22.
Yep. So when we get to that, I think you want to add a change to amend that.
Okay, very good. Anything else, council? Very good. We'll move on to item number 2 on the budget wrap-up agenda, public input on capital improvement plans and budget. This is the time we're going to set aside for the public to comment on either the CIP and or the budget. So public input session is now open. And Brian, so anyone who has indicated interest to address council on either of these items.
Yes, Mayor, I see a hand raised from Jody Stumbo. Jody, you can unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and then begin your comments.
Thank you. Jody Stumbo, and I'm representing the Bridge Home at 225 South Kellogg. I just wanted to comment on the Story County Volunteer Center and the importance that it does bring for some of us small nonprofits. I know we rely on them solely for our volunteer program. We just don't have the staff capacity to be able to take on that role. So we're very grateful for everything they do. And I just wanted to share that to show that we do need them. And I thank you for your time, and I thank you for everything you do, Mayor and council members. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Jody.
The next speaker is Merlin Fonkook.
Good evening. I'm Merlin Fonkook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. I don't know that I have a specific comment so much, but maybe the mayor explained this at the start. But I would like to have a better idea of when these figures related to the investment district are going to be presented, because they've been talked about as being presented February 9th, and you've got the aquatic center, the Starbucks, and you've got the plaza, and you've got all this going on that's not clear when this is going to be presented to me.
Okay. Thank you, Merlin. Steve, would you mind responding to Merlin?
Yes, I think what Merlin's referring to is the deadline to take advantage of a state incentive program It's the Iowa Reinvestment District Program. Is February 22nd. So the first step is for the city, if it's interested, to submit a pre-application. And we need to do that before February 22nd. So we're going to come before council to report all the information we have to date. And then it'll be next Tuesday night on the 16th. I believe it's the 16th at our next meeting. So we'll give you the preliminary information there. And the action is to submit, whether the council wants to submit a preliminary application to try to qualify for this funding.
Hey, can you explain, Sherry, Merlin is correct. There was conversation about this being talked about tonight. May explain why the delay and when the information will be posted so the public can have access to it in advance of the meeting.
The information we're in the process of writing it, and we're gathering as much as we can to date. Hopefully we will have it by Friday afternoon to go out prior to the agenda for Tuesday, as we always do. We're trying to get as much information as we can in preparation to complete the application. Some of the projects include our own, under our control, such as the plaza and the park and the swimming pool, but we're waiting to deal with a major mixed use development, which we're including in there. It's a key to actually generating the revenue and for this project. And that's the project on the north side of Lincoln Way between Kellogg and Clark Avenue. So we didn't have an opportunity to meet with the developers for our first meeting until this week. So we weren't prepared to give you the information tonight. So we've asked for a special meeting during your workshop meeting, in essence, next week. We think we'll have we're going to show you as much information as we've been able to gather in a short week's time to prepare for the pre-application.
Steve? Brian, anybody else?
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay. You'll go ahead and close public input on the CIP and the budget. There will be public forum during the next portion of the meeting to talk about other items with respect to city business that are not on the agenda. Okay, council, we're moving on to item number 3, final council decisions. First one is amendments to the 2021-2026 CIP, if desired. Steve, do you want to offer any comment, or Dwayne, do you want to offer any comment on this item before we?
Dwayne, you want to clarify the one project with the East Industrial Sewer Line?
Yeah, the East Industrial Sewer Line, the page is correct, and everything's correct. It's posted online, but the written books that went out, the summary pages showed that at 2.5 million to 2.7 million. Now, I will note that that's the TIF abated portion, so it has no impact on the property taxes or anything that you're going to do as far as the levy goes. And Nancy's on now. I think the information in the budget, because this is the first year, is actually correct. But we thought it'd be worth just noting and maybe getting approval to update that number from 2.5 to 2.7.
Okay, any questions for Dwayne or Steve on this item? Well, I entertain a motion to adjust the FY 2021-2022 CIP total from $42,891,061 to $43,091,061 to reflect that the East 13th Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Project was increased from $2.5 to $2.7 million.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Good. All right, amendments to the FY 2020-2021 I'm sorry, is there any other amendments to the CIP the council wish to make?
Steve, I just have a question. I don't know if this is necessarily an amendment to the CIP, but you had mentioned in our budget meeting a couple Fridays ago a park improvement to one of the parks to be determined for a, I guess, mini soccer futsal court. And I know that it wasn't on your other list of projects, so I was just wondering where that is included.
Here's what I like. If the council will give us a motion, maybe you can give us a motion. You want us to go research that, come back for cost for that that new facility. I think an exciting new facility. I don't think we have to. I wouldn't say we put it in the CIP necessarily. If it's of an amount that we can deal with right away, we can spend that money out of the park development fund, which we just increased. So if you ask us to go back and look at it, we'll then come back with a cost and a suggestion where we'd go, and then we can decide if we put it in this year or next year. But I don't think it necessarily has to change the CIP right now. I don't think it's of that magnitude of the cost yet.
Right. Okay.
So all I'm looking for, I think, just maybe a motion from council for us to explore a mini pitch, the cost, and bring it back to the council.
Should I wait to do that until
After all the decisions, budget decisions are made?
Yeah.
You will not have to amend the CIP yet. I don't believe that's going to be the case.
Okay.
Should we do a council comments then?
Yeah, that's fine.
Very good.
Steve, Steve, I'd mentioned during our budget meeting that I was wondering about the money that was in the CIP for replacing the carpet in the library in years 2 and 3 of the CIP. And it seemed like that was supposed to be done as a 10-year replacement program, but it was actually coming a little bit before the 10 years, and we've had a year where there hasn't been much foot traffic in the library. And I'm wondering if that's something that can be pushed back so that we actually get as much life out of that carpet as possible before replacing it.
Yeah, Nancy, what year is that? Second year?
I think it's in the second and third years.
I think we could keep it in right now, and then we could come back to you and talk to the director and see if we could slide those in future years.
Yeah, I'm mostly concerned about us not replacing it before its useful life is up. And so I'm not in a position right now to judge that useful life, but judging by what we were told regarding usual lifespan and figuring in a year of little use, it seems like we might be able to slide that in the future. So I won't worry about it now. Yeah, we'll make sure Nancy contacts the director and raises this issue with her about next year, maybe sliding it or justifying why we should go before the 10 years up. That's a good suggestion.
Okay. Any other amendments to the CIP or questions before we vote to approve the CIP as amended? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the 2021 and 2026 CIP as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Who's that, Brown?
Yeah.
Brown, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Burton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen
Aye.
and Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3C, amendments to FY 2020-2021 adjusted budget. Steve or Deb, do you want to just review the $95,000 in the dental clinic moving to primary health care, just so anyone who's watching is aware of what the motion pertains to?
Yep, sure. So primary health care was contacted last spring by Micah when Micah made the decision to close the dental clinic. And primary health care provides dental services in their other locations in Des Moines and Marshalltown. So it is a service that they can provide. And part of what they needed to do was to build out their clinic location here in Ames so that they would have the dental labs, the chairs, all the equipment and everything to be able to provide the services. And so they went to each asset funder who had originally allocated funds to the Micah Dental Clinic, but we withheld those funds when we found out Micah closed the dental clinic. And City Council approved Primary Healthcare's request of $95,000 this current fiscal year for those funds to go towards the build out or the capital of that dental clinic. So that's what the funds are being used for this current year. Going into fiscal year 21-22, the funds are used for services.
Just to be clear, that this $95,000 is not an additional amount, but actually it's a shift from Micah to primary health care. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Any questions for Deb? I entertain a motion adding $95,000 in local option sales tax funding for dental clinic funding to primary health care.
So moved.
Moved. Second.
David and Amber, thank you. Any questions? Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Dee Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
and Garten.
Aye.
Thank you. Any other amendments to the current FY 2021 budget? Steve?
Let me just reiterate, there was a list of projects, one-time costs that I had recommended from the general fund. Those are already incorporated in the budget. So if you pass the budget, they will approve those items. The amended budget, excuse me, for 2021.
And Steve, do we have a place then or a budget that the money for the diversity and inclusion training for City Council is coming from at this point, or is that something that needs to be voted on?
That'll have to be voted on because the mayor and I are going to have to talk to the NLC, Leon, and see what the cost will be. We do have contingency money carried forward. I have no idea at this time what the magnitude will be, but I'm sure we'll be able to find the funds for that. But I don't have an amount of money to even budget right now. So
right, so it's something we can deal with in the future.
Yep, I won't let that be a prohibiting factor in terms of getting your training. We'll find the money for you.
Thanks.
Just to be clear, these recommended one-time expenditures then, Steve, from the general fund balance that she gave that list, and we reviewed that previously in previous meetings, that does not need to be adopted. It's already included, is that correct, in the amended budget?
Nancy assures me she's put those in, so.
Yep, they're in the budget.
Okay, all right. Not hearing anything else from council, I would entertain a motion to approve the adjusted budget for FY 2020-2021 as amended, including inter-fund transfers.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Garten and Corey, roll call, please.
Corey,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Dee Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Okay, amendments to the proposed FY 2021-2022 budget. We have CODA. David?
Oh, yes, if I could speak to CODA. Let me remind everyone that when we first dealt with this back in December, Tim encouraged us to fully fund the request, and I wish I had thought to agree to that at the time. I've come to realize that really is the right thing to do this year. Sorry, I didn't recognize that at the time, and also, assuming we approve this, we'll find out. I'm sorry to CODA for having them go a little back and forth on this. If we do increase the funding, then it's going to mean a little more work for them, hopefully not very much. The way I'm thinking about this is that it's not just a monetary injection. This is kind of a community stimulus. People have been isolated for a long time now. And CODA is an established program that has broad outreach throughout the community. And if we can increase participation in those events and attendance at those events, then that can really help us rediscover each other and maybe help deal with some of the accumulated loneliness over the past year. So on that basis, I think it's really well justified. I know council also has interest in deciding what to do with our overall level of arts funding going forward. And that's something we can continue to work through. But I'm thinking of this as more of a one-time increase given the strange circumstances from the past year. So,
excuse me, David. So from a standpoint of going forward, like for FY 22-23, the baseline would be not this new number, but the 193,093 to be measured in the future. Would that be correct? Or
I guess that's my suggestion. When staff prepares the charts for us and they decide which number to use as the base for expressing a percentage increase, I think it would be sensible to reflect the 5% that we awarded as the base, and maybe just with a notation saying that we awarded an additional amount this year. I've seen Brian come on. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think what we might even do is in the contracts or something, we can put the amount that was recommended and then the difference be indicated as like some COVID supplement or something like that, one-time COVID supplement, so that we can keep track of that better.
And so the agencies don't anticipate or expect that that's going to be the new normal then also? That'd be why, Brian?
Yes, and I think I would indicate that in the letters to the agencies that the contracts go with, just so that they understand the expectation.
In addition, it sounded like there might be some value in having a brief round trip with CODA, the entire board, so just so that we get some assurance from them that they don't have any concerns about the increase that we're not discussing right now before we go forward. It sounds like we would have time to do that. So I'm ready to make a motion unless there are other issues.
Please do.
I would move to increase CODA funding by $30,640 as a one-time increase for a total CODA budget for the fiscal year of $223,733, subject to receiving a memo from CODA expressing acceptance of the increase or outlining any concerns they would like council to process.
Second.
Okay, discussion. So this is actually the amount requested by the agencies totaled $218,175. So you're proposing it would actually be an additional $5,000 on top of that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, and the reason is that in their recommended budget based on the 5% to us, they had managed to carve out that $5,558 for special projects. Special projects are a standard part of CODA's process throughout the year, and I didn't want them to have to figure out what to cut in order to come up with a special project budget. I feel like they've already done a lot of work for the year, and if some organizations might not be ready to ask for their full funding amount, so we might end up spending less than this. That's why I added it back into the total.
Any other discussion? Everyone understand the motion? All right, roll call.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Very good. All right, asset, the recommended total asset authorization is $1,601,093, which includes agency funding of $1,586,291, with a reservation of $14,802. Any discussion or comments regarding asset?
I have one follow-up question with respect to the volunteer center. I'm not prepared to make a specific budget recommendation. There would be more numbers that I would need to have in order to make a thoughtful request. But if their website is anything accurate, they have 7,000 volunteers in their database. And I've long admired the work of Ann Owens in her leadership of the volunteer center. And so whether it's the Stash the Trash that many of us participate in the spring, that literally cleans our city in the spring with volunteers, and a whole host of other things, the MLK Day of Service, I mean, on and on. And I worry about if they lose funding. So this is normally a kind of service that larger communities have, and I think it's really strengthened our community, and we're better off for it. But I don't know how to best reconcile. I'm not criticizing the asset volunteers. Obviously, there was conversation that took place, but I'm wondering if there's some way that our staff could reach out and give guidance. To Gloria's point, that if there was an opportunity for a separate funding mechanism, that we might encourage them and give them some guidance about doing that.
Deb or Steve have any input on that?
Yeah, I mean, if that's council's wish to pursue an alternative funding process, we can certainly discuss that with Ann, and to your point, Tim, too, about the Volunteer Center's website. I mean, I've been on it, and they have many agencies listed on there for volunteer needs. When I specifically look at the ones for asset, there aren't a lot of needs expressed. I think what's happened is the profile is set up, and then as a need may arise, then it's entered in. But clearly, the Volunteer Center is serving a broad array of organizations with all kinds of volunteer opportunities. And I know they've got contracts or agreements in place with some other organizations to do the volunteer management part. It's just not the larger part of their budget.
You say it doesn't match the council goals for asset?
The funder priority is correct.
Funding priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So the clarification I need, you're asking about an alternate funding source? Is that what's being asked for?
Well, I'm not going to try to make the case that they fit asset priorities. I want to defer to asset volunteers and not revisit that. But there is a public good to be served by what they do. I've sent a lot of people who are interested in getting started with serving in their community to the Volunteer Center as a great place. You can think of it like a dating service, matching up people who have a heart for service with opportunities that they may not even be aware of. And I think it's proven to be a very successful venture. And if we take this out of the equation, that's going to leave a very significant gap in. There are unintended consequences of losing the Volunteer Center that I can't even anticipate. So if there were opportunities, and maybe not for all of the deficit, I think it's fair to ask them to look for other sources of funds. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Volunteer Center. I would like Ann to be the one to make that proposal to the city. But I guess not to belabor this further, Mayor, would you like a motion to this effect to put this in process?
Well, we're right now under the asset category, so if it doesn't fit the asset category, I prefer that you, I guess maybe I should ask, what is the intent, or what are you thinking about doing?
Sure. And the location of the motions really doesn't matter. I can do it later. But I simply was going to ask that we would direct staff to reach out to the Volunteer Center and encourage them to consider making some additional appeal directly to the council for funding. And our staff can give them some guidance as far as how that's done.
Right, before we go any further than that, Steve, can you just comment on the timing of that in terms of this year's fiscal budget? I mean, seems pretty late to be doing that. You basically are working on getting this thing wrapped up and getting ready to certify. So,
Yeah, I don't. And are you talking about a one-time type of bailout, or are you talking about what would hit the agency then, Deb? July 1st or this fiscal year? What?
Yeah, the contract would go into effect July 1st.
The reduction in there. I just don't know the magnitude of what we're talking about. You're trying to come up with other city funding for it?
Amber?
I think maybe the asset volunteers and the administration team for asset probably have a lot more information on the volunteer center than all of us have at this time. And so it might be worthwhile for, either Steve or Deb to brief us when we meet one-on-one prior to council meetings or something, and get some more background information before we move forward with any additional action.
Deb, did I understand correctly that if we move forward with our vote on asset at this point, we would need an additional motion to sequester that volunteer center money for continuing discussions? Is that right?
That's correct. So what the asset volunteers are recommending are the funds be sequestered until we get information or documentation from the volunteer center as to what the financial impact will be to the agency. And then if it's to continue then with the funding, then council will need to make a separate or take separate action with the contract to release those funds. So there's time to talk to the volunteer center about this, find out what will happen, and come back to council then with more information.
So at this point,
money's not lost yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
At this point then, with regard to the asset motion, do we need to have two motions on asset funds, Mayor, or do we just need one motion that incorporates the idea of sequestering those funds?
I think let's do a motion approving the total asset authorization first of all, and then we have a motion to sequester funds to be released because it's going to be under the contract. Would that be appropriate, Steve?
Let's make sure, Deb, the total amount that they approve includes the sequestered funds, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It does.
You want to authorize the total amount, and you'll come back and make a motion to sequester the amount for the volunteer center.
And for primary health care.
For the $22,475, whatever it is, for the
for primary health care. And then there's the unallocated amount that a decision has to be made on. The 14,000.
Okay, all right. Sorry, so the first motion is going to be is a total asset authorization.
Right.
And then I think it'd be probably just easier to have three short motions in terms of sequestering for each individual agency then. And that way it's very clear in the middle. All right. So I entertain a motion on approving the total asset authorization in the amount of $1,601,093.
So moved.
Betcher?
Second.
Second by Garten. Thank you. Roll call.
Katie Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Orieri. Martin.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion authorizing the reservation of $14,802 in unused asset budgeted funds for additional needs that may arise in FY 21-22.
So moved.
Second.
Just point of clarification, that amount of money is actually included in the 1,601,93. It's just saying that we're going to reserve that portion of that total amount of money for use, and then Deb, you would come back to council. Is that correct, for authorization to spend that additional money for that?
Correct. Mhm.
Everyone understand the motion? Roll call.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Thornton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to sequester the FY22 funding for the Volunteer Center of Story County in the amount of $3,285, pending documentation of financial stability of the organization.
So moved.
Corriere,
Second.
Garten, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
And I entertain a motion to sequester the amount of $2,475 from the amount allocated to primary health care. I'm gonna push pause for a second. Deb, this is until, help me with the wording on this.
Until a request is received for the use of those dollars.
Okay, and those services are specific to childhood dental and fluoride varnish, correct?
The asset recommendation is just for all dental services, which would include those services.
So the amount over $95,000.
Correct.
Amy, I butchered that. Suggested motion, you follow that?
I did, sir.
All right. Is there a motion? Your motion on that?
Second. Oh, I need the motion.
Move it.
I'll make the motion. Sorry.
Gloria and David, thank you. Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to outside funding requests.
Mayor, I think there was public art as well, isn't there?
Yes, thank you for catching that. Public art, number 3. Proposed budget, 46,000, requested 46,000. Any discussion on this? Entertain a motion approving the FY21-22 budget of $46,000 for public art.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, David. All right, moving on to outside funding requests. The amount that is included right now is $218,762 with a one-time funding to Ames Downtown Farmers Market of $7,000 for a total of $225,762. Discussion or comments? All right. Steve, Brian, or Dwayne, or Nancy, do you prefer to have one motion proving the complete $225,762, or do you prefer, for your purposes, to have it in 2 separate motions with the $7,000 for farmers market carried separately?
So I think there might be as many as 4 motions here. So we can start with the easy ones first. So first, 15,000 from the hotel motel tax fund for AEDC.
That's a job creation program.
All right, entertain a vote. Don't understand what we're doing on the, this is from the outside funding request worksheet that Brian presented. So I entertain a motion on the AEDC Workforce Development Program in the amount of $15,000.
So moved.
Second.
Martin and Bescher, thank you. Roll call.
I'm sorry, Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Okay, then the next one would be a $7,000 one-time allocation for farmers market.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Betcher.
Second.
Garten, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
So next would be then is a motion on CAA, Capital Access Association, Ames Main Street parking waivers in the amount of $5,489.
So moved.
Martin,
Second.
Betcher, thank you. Roll call.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. So then it would be the remainder then, right, Brian? The remainder of the outside funding request in the amount of
$218,762 for the remainder of the requests as requested.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Amber,
Second.
Rachel, thank you. Roll call.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Are there any other amendments to the 2021-22 budget? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-2022 as amended, including inter-fund transfer.
Move approval.
Second.
Tim, thank you. Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Thank you. And entertain a motion to set February 23rd, 2021 as date of final public hearing to adopt a maximum property tax levy for FY 2021-2022.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, Gloria and Bronwyn, thank you. Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Good. I think I speak on behalf of the entire city council. Thank you, Steve, Brian, Deb, Dwayne, Nancy, all the department heads for all your hard work helping us accomplish our goals, priorities, setting policy. A lot of work, lots of numbers, but thank you for your direction and all your efforts. Job well done again. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to our regular city council meeting. First item on the agenda this evening is consent agenda and council at staff's request. Item number 16 is being pulled. they're waiting a signed contract from the vendor, and that had not been received as of yet this afternoon. It's still becoming, and it may be on the agenda for next week, but or the week thereafter. But is there anyone that wants to pull any item from the agenda? Hearing none, and entertain a motion approving consent absent item 16.
So moved.
Rachel?
Second.
And Gloria, thank you. Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Burton,
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll move on to public forum. This is the time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business, other than those items listed on the agenda. And I'll open public forum. Brian, is anyone who wants to address council this evening?
Yes, Mayor Merlin Fonkook. Merlin, you can go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Merlin Fonkook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. I just want to say that I was really disappointed that you held your Saturday goal setting session in a venue where you could not live stream it like or Zoom it like this. During a pandemic, that seemed to be to me a mostly foolish move on your part. Maybe it was done so that you could tour the water plant thereafter, but you effectively shut the public out of this session, and it's been that way for 20 years or more. I remember that I complained when Senator Kornbach was still on the council, so it's been that long ago, that why is this session always conducted in a venue where you're pushing the intent of the open meetings law? I don't understand that. And I would have complained ahead of time, except I didn't discover that you were having this meeting until about 10 o'clock last Thursday night. My health is limited how closely I can watch what you're doing this year. But I don't really see. At one point, there was a facilitator who had come up from Iowa City for kind of a workshop, but looking at what David and Bronwyn wrote about this, I don't see that that was really necessary this year. I mean, I just don't understand. The problem that I see with process here is that once something gets established, it kind of goes on without any serious reconsideration of whether it makes any sense. And frankly, I don't see any sense to why Saturday's session was not held like a regular meeting during the pandemic where it's electronic. Bronwyn wrote in her after meeting summary that she always finds it one of the most interesting meetings of the year. I would have liked to have an opportunity to listen in on at least part of it so I could find out if it was interesting or I would think it was dull. I think you made a poor decision to do this. And please do not continue this practice of having this meeting other than treat it as a regular meeting where if it's held in the council chambers, it can be live streamed. Frankly, it's kind of maddening. Thank you.
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. We will go ahead and close public forum and move on to item 24, resolution approving preliminary plat for Sunset Ridge subdivision, 11th edition. Kelly, you have any comments that you wish to make?
I don't really have much to add. It's a replat of the final edition of Sunset Ridge to account for 2 lots that have been added over the last 15 years. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Council, any questions for Kelly? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion approving preliminary plat for Sunset Ridge subdivision, 11th edition.
So moved.
Martin?
Second.
Garten, thank you. Roll call.
Martin,
Aye.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Ledger,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 25, public hearing on 2019-2020 sanitary sewer rehabilitation, basin number 10. John, any comments or presentation you wish to make tonight?
No, not really. The bids came in really well. They're below what we had estimated, well within the budget. That's about it. Nothing really to add.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that under budget and great bids.
Yep.
Any questions for John on this particular item? Seeing none, declare the public hearing on the 2019-2020 sanitary sewer rehabilitation basin 10 to be over. Open, not over. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this particular project? Brian?
Sorry, Mayor. No, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Thank you. We'll declare the public hearing to be closed, entertaining a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Municipal Pipe Tool Company, LLC of Hudson, Iowa, in the amount of $952,843.78 as the base bid, and $330,320 as alternate number 1. The total contract amount of $1,283,163.78.
So moved.
Second. And Rachel, thank you. Roll call.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Ledger,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 26, hearing on Baker subdivision geothermal heat pump system. Mr. Khan, do you have any comments you wish to make on this particular item?
Mr. Mayor, no, I don't. I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Khan? Hearing none, declare the public hearing on the Baker subdivision geothermal heat pump system to be open. Is there anyone who wishes to address council on this particular item? Anybody, Brian?
No, Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on the resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Thorpe Water Development Company of Ankeny, Iowa, in the amount of $235,835 inclusive of Iowa state sales tax.
So moved.
Betcher?
Second.
Junk, thank you. Roll call.
Ledger,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to disposition of communications to council. We have 6 of them this evening. First is a memo from Mark requesting council to direct the attorney to clarify section 17.25 of the Ames Municipal Code, pawnbrokers, itinerant dealers, and secondhand dealers. Mark, do you have any comments, or your memo explanatory?
I think the memo covers it, but just, you know, we found an error. The secondhand dealers were left out of the requirement to have a permit, and we just need to amend the ordinance to put them back in where they should have been in the first place.
Okay, so looking for a motion to direct the city attorney to clarify section 17.25.
So moved. Second.
Garten and Betcher, thank you. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Item 2 is a letter from Sandy Risdall, Habitat for Humanity, relative to desiring to purchase a property at 1126 Grand Avenue for purposes of building an affordable family home. Steve, any comments on this?
I think you want to refer this to staff, and let's keep it open. If it's very complex, we'll have a memo back to you. If it's not, we'll just bring it forward to the council directly with options. So just refer it to staff, and we'll make sure the proper action is brought before you.
Okay.
I move we refer this to staff.
Thank you, Gloria.
Second.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Any questions, any comments? Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, motion carried. Item 3 is staff response to council referral about adding ragweed to the city's noxious weed list. Does council wish to do so or just decline to do so and follow the recommendations of the staff?
I would move that we follow the staff recommendations and send an appropriate letter to the original requester of this investigation.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Amber. Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is a staff report relative to excessive speeding on Ash Avenue.
Mayor, as I understand it, if council doesn't do anything with these traffic reports, that Damien will simply take action that he feels is warranted by the situations.
That's my understanding based on the memo. Steve, is it?
John Joyner's on. We can verify that. John? Brian, you with John on?
Yep, he's coming.
Yes, that's correct. The recommendations in all 3 of these next memos will follow through on unless council has a different direction for us.
Steve, do you want any kind of motion affirming that, or just go ahead and just follow the memo and be done with it then?
I think a lack of action to change it, then we've reported back to you and we told you what we would do.
Okay, all right.
We don't need direction on doing it. I think the funds in this first one, we have an accessibility enhancement program. We can take the funds out of there, right, John?
Yes, that's correct. We have available funding.
That's for Ash now.
Okay. I don't see any additional motion, so I'm going to proceed with the next item, assuming that we're going to leave that one and staff follow through. Second one is on Delaware Avenue traffic study.
Want to go over, John, just to emphasize what our recommendation is on that?
Actually, let's back up a second. John, you want to just highlight, because I think people may be watching or interested in all 3 of these on Ash. Can you just highlight real briefly what the recommended improvements are?
Yeah, on Ash, we found that there was some speeding issues. So we're going to do a 4-way stop at Country Club and Ash. And then we're going to do an enhanced pedestrian crossing that will provide access to the separated bike and walkway. So we anticipate that this will help with both the mix of traffic as well as the speed of traffic. And then we're also going to have some dynamic feedback signs that will be a little farther south in the corridor.
And would you explain what dynamic feedback sign is?
Yeah, if you've driven on Ontario east of Sawyer, if you're heading westbound, that'll tell you what your speed is and advise you if you're going too fast and to slow down. And there's also one south of the hospital if you're heading southbound on Duff.
Okay. All right. All right. So how about now on Delaware?
We found that there was not really any speeding issues on the northern part up by Utah, but there was some speeding issues farther south by Dover. So we're going to work with the police to do increased enforcement. And then we also have new data capabilities that on a monthly basis that we can track what the generalized speeds are for any particular corridor. So we will track the ongoing speeds in that area to make sure the ongoing enforcement is doing the right thing that we're hoping for.
That was staff recommendation.
Right. So that staff recommendation is just at this point the increased enforcement.
Okay. Council, unless you want to make a motion to the contrary, we're going to presume that this is going to proceed following staff recommendation.
I do have one question about this, and that is, do you imagine the increased enforcement concerns northbound traffic on Delaware more than southbound traffic on Delaware, or is it sort of equally distributed, or do you not know?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's actually the southbound traffic. So the southbound traffic on Delaware more towards Dover. So I think it's as the traffic's starting to head down that hill, they just kind of naturally pick up speed. So that's the area that we'll look at.
That makes sense. I just want to mention that we did receive an email from a resident who very directly pointed out a situation involving having to turn left onto Delaware in order to go northbound, and how that is, you kind of have to do that quickly because of traffic coming southbound on South Dakota. So I think
North Dakota.
what you're describing on North Dakota, on Delaware, sorry. Anyway, what you're describing sounds like it's not intended to make it any harder to turn left onto Delaware.
Correct.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. And then speeding complaints on Cessna.
Sure. So that's the third one. We actually did a study using our detection equipment in January of 20, so just about a year ago. And we found out there wasn't really a speeding issue in this area. But there was some concern from the residents that maybe the time of year had something to do with that. So again, using this data, we looked month by month over the last year, and we found that there was actually an increase in the February, March, April timeframe. So kind of that onset of COVID. And you've probably heard anecdotes about that around Iowa and around the country that for some reason the speeds picked up. So we actually did see that on this street during those first 3 months, but after that, everything normalized and went back to what it had been. So if you look at the year as a whole, the speeds really stayed the same from when we did our study in early 2020 to what it is now. But we did agree that we would do some enhanced visibility for the all-way stop at Cessna and Beach. So we'll be adding the red flashers to the all-way stops there. We also have an all-way stop that we looked at Cessna and Country Club. However, with the lack of speeding, no accidents to note in that area, for now, we'll just keep that intersection as is, but we will add the enhanced visibility at Cessna and Beach.
John, has staff been in touch with the neighbors there with regard to the findings that Damien has published for us?
Yes, Damien emailed the gentleman that made the request and let him know what our recommendation was going to be.
Okay. Is everyone support staff recommendations? And if so, we're going to go ahead and move on then. And so will there be periodic checks then, John? I know that I think multiple council members, I know I was contacted with respect to the Cessna speeding and the concerns. Will that be, will staff just check or like every few months to see how things are going, or?
Right. Yeah, we plan to keep an eye on it, on that intersection, both the speeds as well as to see if there's any uptick in accidents or anything like that. So we'll keep an eye on that intersection.
Yeah. And then do you think that I found it interesting that on Ash and Country Club, you're putting a stop sign. Will that also be potentially affect any of the speed on Cessna Country Club, or?
Right. We don't think so, but that's what we'll want to monitor is the speeds, not only at that intersection, but kind of around that general area.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for the explanation and for jumping back on.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. We'll do council comments. David?
You know, I was just looking at the ragweed memo again. It doesn't clearly contain a staff recommendation about what to do. Steve, did you understand our motion to say that we're not going to change the ordinance and we're not going to add it to the noxious weeds list? Isn't that right?
That's what the building official concluded.
Okay, thanks. Then with that clarification, no further comments from me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Thanks. Amber?
So just following up on our discussion earlier, I would like to make a motion that we get a memo from the city manager on a plan for the funding and implementation of the soccer or the mini soccer futsal court in the park system.
You mean a mini pitch? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Second.
All right. Second by Garten. Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else, Amber? Nicole?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Bronwyn?
Nothing for me.
Tim?
Just follow up on the discussion of the volunteer center. I would move that we direct staff to reach out to the volunteer center and encourage them to make any proposals they think are warranted for funding in light of the reduction they've received.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
This doesn't commit us to anything. It just gives them sort of a path to make a proposal. If there are concerns that are more serious that we need to take into account, this would give us an opportunity to think about those. So I'm just wanting to extend an opportunity to visit with us further.
So my question is, do we have a clear understanding that due to our asset change that the volunteer center is at financial peril?
We don't know that for sure, but over 60% of their revenue is coming from asset. Again, they do have some outside contracts, and I looked that up in their budget in the meantime. And those outside contracts run about $29,000 for other services. But we want to be able to have that dialogue with Ann and any of her board members to see what plans they may have in place. These recommendations have been posted publicly for the agencies since January 22nd. And so agencies can go out on the website, the asset website, and see them. And I do think in talking with the volunteer center, if we can get a better idea of where they may sit after these recommendations are approved by all the funders, we can find out what their plan is. United Way has approved the asset recommendations. The county considers them next week, and student government, I believe, is the end of February, maybe beginning of March. So that's where it stands from the asset perspective.
Okay, and one other question, not to preempt this, but would the outside funding process be appropriate for something like this? I know it might not happen quickly enough for this year, but is that the sort of thing that we would be able to consider in that process?
I guess I would defer to Steve and Brian for that. I'm not sure what the priorities are that surround that process.
Brian, you have a evaluation criteria the council approved criteria, or what they are?
Yes, so just like assets, there are criteria for what the council is interested in buying through that outside funding process. We publish that as part of the application. I don't have it in front of me, but it contains things such as services that the city would otherwise be providing directly that an agency is providing at a lower cost. Services that have a unique benefit or broad-based appeal to the community. So there are some criteria. Now, I note that the outside funding request process is the same pool of funding that asset is from, right? They're both local option sales tax fund programs. So I guess I think the council would need to think about what's being accomplished by shifting from asset to the outside funding request program.
I think what we're trying to recommend is there's a limited source of revenue. That's why we'd ask you to make prioritization. So
right,
prioritize out of the same pot you're prioritizing for one group and you're opening up for another. You just have to, I think you got to establish some criteria. Every group now outside your funding priorities could come before you, which is fine. I don't want to be the Grinch here, but there's got to be some kind of prioritization sometimes.
Amber?
I think that was, sorry.
Amber, do you have a comment you'll make? Or?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I just go back to what I stated before, and I'm not going to support the motion because I do think that at some point in the future, we're going to receive an update from the administration team on the status of the volunteer center, especially because those funds are sequestered. And so I just think it's premature for us to be encouraging them to apply for other funding through us when we really don't know what their plan is for sustainability or service in Story County.
Gloria?
I seconded the motion primarily because I wanted to discuss it, but it seems to me that this motion, I assumed, came after the discussion that Asset is having with the Story County Volunteer Center. So I didn't see it as preempting that process or assuming that we're willing to give funding, but something that came after we learned more from the asset investigation, which we've already approved, right, with the sequestering of the funds. Is that, Tim, is that not what you were intending with your motion?
Yeah, this is just, I mean, we actually don't have to do this. I mean, the volunteer center could initiate a dialogue with our city staff independently of any motion that we make. But I think it sends a message to the volunteer center that we've valued their services in the past. We don't know how that discussion would play out. There may well be concerns that we have to take into account, but where if an agency has played such an important role in the community, and you had an example tonight from one of those agencies that received the benefit, they are not the only ones. And so all I'm doing is suggesting a dialogue. So I'm not going to lose sleep either way tonight. Ann is able to reach out to city staff independently without this, but I think it would send an appropriate message from the council.
Right. Everyone understand the motion?
I guess I still need clarification because, like I said, I thought I was seconding something that came after the asset discussion occurred. Tim, is your motion to have staff engaging in this discussion before that asset discussion occurs?
Yeah, I apologize if there was something unclear with this. The asset process is independent of my motion. they'll need to have that discussion regarding the sequestered funds, and so I think it should be done independently of that.
So that wasn't what I thought I was seconding.
Well, you can withdraw the second. The motion died.
So,
You can also second it.
the motion been moved and seconded, so now it's been discussed. We're going to vote on it. All right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All right. We got Brown and Tim, is that correct? Anybody else? Those opposed?
No.
Motion failed.
I would like to follow up on that though, and just say that I think that can occur after the asset process goes through its discussion with the volunteer center. So I hope Ann will get in touch and discuss the situation, because they do provide a valuable service.
Okay. Tim, anything else you want to add tonight?
Nothing else, thanks.
Okay, Gloria?
Yeah, well, I just said it, I guess. So if Ann Owens is watching this, I hope that she will follow through after the asset process, and that I hope we find out more from that asset process and learn more about what the situation of the volunteer center is. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Well, as we close out this budget process, again, it never ceases to amaze me on what a phenomenal job our staff does, first of all. Secondly, we're going to be investing $1.6 million back into human service agencies, many agencies, lots of programs, all thanks to the 1 cent sales tax, a portion of that being used. But also well over $5 million of our 1 cent sales tax is reducing property tax. And it's amazing to me that we're going to actually see our levy rate go down this year, not go up. And while our assessed valuation has gone up, the staff's been very transparent with that because of that increase, but also because of good fiscal management by all the department heads. We're seeing the levy rate go down, which I just think is phenomenal this time of where we're at as a nation and as a city. So, well done, everybody. Last item is I need to call a special meeting for next Tuesday night at 6 p.m. for the purposes of reviewing the Iowa Reinvestment Act. So, Council, you'll be getting, or as Steve was referring or explaining to Merlin and everybody, your packet that should be posted by the end of the day on Friday. And that will be a topic of discussion on next Tuesday night's meeting. So with that, we need to also go in closed session. So Tim, do you want to do the honors once again, posing the question to Mr. Lambert?
Sure, as required by the Iowa Code. Mr. Lambert, do we have justification for going into closed session?
Yes, we do. Iowa Code Section 21.51C allows the council to go into closed session to discuss matters that are in litigation or threatened litigation.
I move we go into closed session.
Or second?
Second.
All right, Gloria, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Burton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Just for the general public information, the council and staff will be leaving this Zoom meeting. There's a different Zoom meeting link that we'll be using, but we'll come back to this one to come back in open session before the meeting is actually closed. So, council, we'll see you in a short while on the other Zoom meeting link.
Can we consider this a couple minute break before we start up there?
Sure. We will start at let's say 7:10.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye. Session. I would entertain a motion to place the purchase of 2802 Arbor Street on a future council agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ryland, second by Gloria. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Nay.
Motion carried 5-1. Okay. Council, thank you for all your time and efforts. I've been a busy last couple of weeks and look forward to interacting with you again next week. And so I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned for the evening. Have a great rest of the night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Bye.